Hello, curious minds, and welcome to this intellectual journey. Today, we'll delve into the mind of a man who saw the future burn before it happened. A thinker often misunderstood, yet whose shadow looms large over all modern politics. We're talking about Edmund Burke, the intellectual father of classical conservatism. But forget what you think you know about that word. Burke wasn't a blind defender of power, but a philosopher of prudence who understood the fragility of civilization. Before we begin, a brief note. To bring this narrative to life, I've used artificial intelligence tools to generate the images you see. Think of them as a canvas, a way to illustrate the ideas and atmosphere of what we're discussing. They won't always be a literal, historical representation, but rather a visual accompaniment to let your imagination soar with me. I sincerely hope you enjoy it and that these images help immerse us in the 18th century. To understand Burke, we must first place ourselves in his context. He was born in Dublin in the year 1729. Ireland at that time was a place of religious and political tensions, and Burke grew up witnessing the complexity of human conflict. Although today we call him a conservative, Burke was a member of the Whig Party, the liberal party of his era. He defended Irish Catholics and criticized the abuses of the East India Company. He was no defender of tyrants. His philosophy wasn't born from a hatred of change, but from a profound distrust of abstract reason. Burke believed that society is too complex to be understood or manipulated by a single human mind, no matter how brilliant it may be. Imagine society not as a machine that can be disassembled and reassembled, but as a living organism, an ancient tree whose roots delve deep into the soil of history. If you cut the roots, the tree dies. Here enters his fundamental concept, the critique of political rationalism. In the 18th century, the Enlightenment promised that human reason could solve all problems and redesign the world from scratch. Burke said, hold on a minute. For Burke, relying solely on individual reason is an act of arrogance. He argued that tradition is not about worshiping the ashes, but preserving the fire. Customs exist because they have worked, surviving through the centuries. He called this prejudice, but not in the negative sense we use today. For Burke, prejudice is the latent wisdom accumulated over generations. It's a mental shortcut that helps us act morally without having to calculate everything every single time. If every morning we had to rationally deduce why we shouldn't kill or steal, society would collapse. We need those habits, those unwritten rules we wear like a second skin, to keep the social fabric together. This leads us to one of his most beautiful and profound ideas, the social contract. Rousseau and others spoke of a contract among the living to form a government. Burke expands this idea into an almost mystical and temporal dimension. For him, society is an association, but not a temporary association for trading pepper or tobacco. It is an association in all science, in all art, in all virtue, and in all perfection. It is a sacred pact. Listen closely to this because it's the core of his thought. The contract isn't just between those who are living now. It's an association between those who are dead, those who are living, and those who are yet to be born. This vision turns us into custodians. We aren't owners of the world, we are its temporary caregivers. We have a moral duty to preserve the heritage of our ancestors and pass it on, intact or improved, to our descendants. That's why Burke defended private property and inheritance. Not just for economic reasons, but because they allow families to plan for the long term, creating stability and a sense of belonging that transcends individual life. Now, this doesn't mean Burke opposed liberty. He loved liberty. But he distinguished between an ordered and virtuous liberty and what he called an abstract and unrestrained freedom. Freedom without wisdom and without virtue is the greatest of all possible evils, he would say. It's madness without guardians. To be truly free, we must be capable of governing our own passions. Burke argued that restrictions on men, their liberties, and their rights are not opposing things. Restrictions are part of their rights because they are what guarantees that justice can exist. Before we get to his great political battle, we must touch upon his aesthetics. Burke wrote about the sublime and the beautiful. The beautiful is that which is soft, small, and delicate, inspiring love and social relaxation. The sublime, on the contrary, is vast, dark, and powerful. Like a storm on the ocean or an immense mountain, the sublime inspires awe and a certain kind of respectful terror that makes us feel our own smallness. This aesthetic idea filters into his politics. Ancient institutions like the monarchy or the church possessed for him a sublime quality. They inspired a reverential respect necessary to maintain order without the constant use of force. If we remove that veil of mystery and respect, if we reduce the king or the judge to mere fallible men, we lose moral authority, and then the state can only govern us through direct fear and violence. And so we arrive at the event that defined his legacy, the year 1789. The French Revolution erupts. While many in England celebrated the fall of the Bastille as a triumph of liberty, Burke was horrified. He saw something others ignored. He saw that the revolutionaries weren't seeking to reform a corrupt system, but to erase everything. They wanted to start the calendar from year one, change the names of the months, and abolish God. In his masterpiece, Reflections on the Revolution in France, Burke issued a chilling prophecy. He warned that by destroying all intermediate institutions, the revolution would end in a bloodbath and a military dictatorship. His argument was that the rights of man proclaimed by the French were dangerous abstractions. What good is having the metaphysical right to food if you have no bread on the table and no farmer to grow it? Burke preferred the rights of the English. Concrete, specific, inherited rights born of history and custom, not from a philosophical theory invented in a Parisian cafe. He fiercely criticized the armchair intellectuals who believed they could design a society on paper as if it were a building. Politics, Burke said, must conform to human nature, not try to change it. Human nature is fallible, passionate, and limited. Any system that assumes men will always be rational and virtuous is doomed to fail. We need checks and balances. Burke predicted the reign of terror years before the guillotine appeared. He said that when traditional moral restraints are removed, the will to power knows no bounds. And he was morbidly accurate. Even more impressively, he predicted the arrival of Napoleon. He wrote that amidst the chaos generated by mass democracy, a popular general would emerge to restore order with the sword and become the master of France. It's fascinating to contrast this with his stance on the American Revolution. Many wonder how he could support the American colonists yet condemn the French. Wasn't that a contradiction? For Burke, it wasn't. He saw American independence as a conservative revolution. The colonists weren't asking for new abstract rights. They were seeking to reclaim their traditional rights as Englishmen. They said, no taxation without representation. That is an ancient principle of English law. Burke saw that King George III was innovating by breaking that custom, and the colonists were merely defending the legal status quo. In contrast, the French Revolution was a revolution of total innovation. It didn't seek to restore a lost right, but to create a new world disconnected from any precedent. That was the key difference. This leads us to his famous quote, "A state without the means of some change is without the means of its conservation." Burke wasn't against change, he was against abrupt change. Change must be gradual, organic, and respectful. It should be like repairing an old castle while people are still living inside. You change one stone here and there, but you don't demolish the foundations. Prudence? That is the supreme virtue of the politician for Burke. Prudence is knowing that every political action has unintended consequences and that we must proceed with caution, treading carefully. Burke teaches us to distrust universal problem solvers, to distrust those who claim to have the magic formula for human happiness, if only we give them all the power to apply it. His defense of religion is also crucial. Burke saw religion as the foundation of civil society, not just for theological reasons, but because it provides the comfort and morality that law alone cannot enforce. If we eliminate God, Burke would say, man becomes a wolf to man. Religion teaches us that there is something superior to our own will, and that moderates our natural selfishness. Burke also valued what he called the little platoons. The family, the local community, the church, the guild. These small associations are where we learn to love and to be citizens. Love for our country begins with love for our own small section of it. Nobody loves their country as a geographical abstraction. We love our memories, our neighbors, our local customs. Centralism, which destroys these little platoons to leave only the individual facing the monstrous state, was for Burke the path to tyranny. A highly relevant warning for the modern world. He is often criticized for being elitist. And it's true, Burke believed in a natural aristocracy. He believed that some people have more capacity, virtue, and talent to govern than others. But be warned that aristocracy was not meant to be closed. He himself was a self-made man who rose by his talent. He believed in a meritocracy filtered by time and education, not an impermeable caste. However, he feared pure mass democracy. He believed that the will of the majority could be as tyrannical as the will of a single king. The majority can decide to commit terrible injustices. That's why he advocated for representation. The politician is not an errand boy who does what the polls say. He is a representative who must use his judgment and conscience, even if that means going against his constituents. In his famous speech to the electors of Bristol, he told them, "Your representative owes you not his industry only, but his judgment, and he betrays instead of serving you if he sacrifices it to your opinion." This idea is unpopular today, where we expect politicians to be mirrors of public opinion. But Burke reminds us that politics requires specialization, study, and a tempered character. Towards the end of his life, Burke felt isolated. The revolution advanced, and his warnings seemed to fall on deaf ears. He died in 1797, fearing that European civilization was coming to an end. He didn't live to see his complete vindication. He didn't see the fall of Napoleon or the restoration of order, but his writings became the Bible of resistance against radicalism throughout Europe. His legacy is complex. He has been championed by conservatives, liberals, and even some socialists who value community. Because Burke touches upon fundamental truths about the human social condition, he teaches us that it's far easier to destroy than to build. That civilization is a fragile veneer over savage instincts, and once you break the rules of coexistence, the return to barbarism is swift. He reminds us that we are heirs to a treasure we haven't earned ourselves. The liberties we enjoy, the order, the security, are gifts from our ancestors, paid for with their effort and blood. Contempt for the past is for Burke a form of ingratitude, and ingratitude is an ugly vice. A society that doesn't respect its dead will hardly respect itself. Burke invites us to humility, to accept that we don't know everything, to understand that the world didn't begin the day we were born, and that perhaps those old traditions that seem absurd to us have a hidden reason for being. In a world obsessed with novelty, disruption, and constant technological revolution, Burke's voice is an anchor. He tells us, wait, look before you leap. Think about the long-term consequences. It's not about rejecting progress. It's about progressing without losing our soul, about integrating the new into the old instead of replacing it, about being gardeners of society instead of engineers. The garden metaphor is perfect. A gardener prunes, waters, and guides. He respects nature's cycles. An engineer tries to force nature to obey his blueprints. Burke chooses the garden. Today we see extreme polarization. We see groups that want to burn everything down and start from scratch. We see the erosion of institutions. Burke would tell us that we are playing with fire. His concept of moral imagination is vital. We need to imagine the other not as an abstract enemy, but as a neighbor. We need to clothe power in gentle manners so that it isn't brutal. Burke defended chivalry. Not medieval tournaments, but the spirit of honor that makes the strong protect the weak and power bow before justice. Without that, only the law of the jungle remains. So what can we learn from him? That politics is not theology. It doesn't seek paradise on earth. It simply seeks to make human coexistence tolerable and just. That liberty requires order. That change requires continuity. And that the individual is foolish, but the species is wise. That is the lesson of Burke and conservatism. It's not an ideology of stagnation. It's an ideology of gratitude. Gratitude for what works, gratitude for peace, and gratitude for the institutions that protect us from chaos. In the end, Edmund Burke doesn't offer us a blueprint for utopia. He offers us something more valuable, a mirror to see our own limitations and a compass to navigate the storms of history. His voice echoes through the centuries, warning us about arrogance and reminding us of the value of the sacred. In times of noise, his reflective silence is more necessary than ever. Perhaps we won't agree with everything he said. His defense of aristocracy might sound foreign to us, but his defense of prudence and complexity is universal. He challenges us not to be mere summer flies that live and die without a trace. He challenges us to be worthy links in the great chain of being. Thus we close this chapter on Edmund Burke, the prophet who saw the terror behind the promises of absolute liberty, the man who loved freedom so much that he wanted to protect it from its own excesses. I hope this journey has given you new tools to look at the political world. Not to choose a side, but to understand the depth of what is at stake. If you've enjoyed this in-depth analysis and want to continue exploring the great ideas that have shaped our world, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is Burke right in saying that abrupt change is dangerous? Or is total revolution sometimes necessary? I'll be reading. I'm your host on this journey of knowledge. Remember that history isn't just the past, it's the map of the present. Until next time, restless minds, let's keep cultivating the garden. Let's keep thinking. Goodbye. Oh, and one final thought. Remember that for Burke, the opposite of love isn't hatred, it's indifference towards our heritage. Mind your roots, because without them, the gentlest wind knocks us down. Thanks for sticking with me until the end. See you in the next video, where we'll unravel another mystery of philosophy.